Hello and welcome to the Federal webinar. I'm S. Srinivasan. The expression double engine Sarkar or government was used for the first time by BJP leaders 6 months after the massive win 2014 parliamentary elections. The leaders were campaigning for Haryana and Maharashtra assembly elections, and the message to the voters was simple. You have elected us to parliament, and now if you choose us in the states as well, we can ensure better development of your state. Subsequently, since 2014, there have been elections to 45 state assemblies, and the expression double engine Sarkar is being used unfailingly to attract voters. On the face of it, there is nothing amiss or illegal about a political party using such an expression to get votes and thereby telling the voters that they are running an efficient government at the center and would do the same if elected to power in the state facing an election. There is another side to the argument. Once a government assumes power, especially at the center, it is supposed to treat all the states equally, irrespective of its party affiliation. But by telling the electorate that they stand to benefit if they elect the same government at the center and the state, is the BJP government at the center holding out an implicit or implied threat of treating non-BJP state governments differently as compared to BJP state governments? Does it augur well for a country like India, where elections are cornerstone of democracy in a federal setup? To discuss the issue in next 1.5 hours, I'm joined by a distinguished panel. I have with me Professor Om Prakash Mishra, leader of Trinamool Congress. He joins us from Calcutta. Welcome, Mr. Mishra. I have Dhananjay, K.V. Dhananjay. He's a senior advocate who practices both in Karnataka High Court and Supreme Court. He joins us from Bengaluru. Welcome, Dhananjay. It's a pleasure to introduce S.G. Surya, a young BJP leader from Tamil Nadu. He's newly appointed as State Secretary of the party and joins us from Chennai. Welcome, Surya. Finally, I have Sangeeta Sundaram. She is Tamil Nadu State Secretary of All India Professionals, an arm of the Congress Party. Welcome, Sangeeta.
Thank you.
I welcome all of you to the webinar, and the format is very simple. Initially, each speaker is invited to speak for about 3 minutes, following which we slip into discussions. If time permits, we would take questions from the audiences in the last 15 minutes or so. And let's open with Professor Mishra. What does the expression double engine Sarkar or double engine government means to you in the context of relations between the center and the West Bengal government so far, the things you have seen so far in that context?
Well, it doesn't mean anything to me. In fact, by using this expression, if the BJP is wanting to say that they are going to deprive the people of Odisha from the central assistance as compared to other BJP states, are they wanting to say that the Tamil Nadu is going to be discriminated against? Are they not going to concede that they have been discriminating against West Bengal? So therefore, this is a political slogan. And this political slogan, of course, as you said, that there is nothing illegal about using a political slogan, but then this is against the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. I am not surprised that the BJP believes in this type of a statement and slogan, because after all, they don't believe in the Constitution of India. If they are mindful of the legislative relations between the center and the union, administrative relations between the union, or they are mindful of the Schedule 7 of the Constitution, if they are mindful of the fact that in Africa, there are 54 countries, and the total population of all the entire 54 countries is less than that of India. The diversity that the African countries represent is actually lesser than that what we exhibit here in India. All the European countries put together, it is less diversity as compared to India. So we are a very big country. Constitution framers, they knew it, and then they provided for it. But then, of course, the RSS, they never believed in the Constitution of India. In fact, they rejected the Constitution of India, saying that it doesn't provide for Manusmriti, so we do not subscribe to this Constitution. This is recorded. They have not, RSS has not withdrawn their statement. So therefore, when you say double engine sarkar, etc., etc., so basically you are trying to argue against the constitutional provisions, arrangements, and the convention that has gone. We have hundreds and thousands of political parties. BJP is, of course, a very legitimate political. But then how can they say that we need to win the elections in Madhya Pradesh? Madhya Pradesh Panchayat Raj elections. So therefore, could they have argued that we need a triple engine sarkar? Because right now the elections were just held. This is a slogan. This is against the spirit of the constitution. But then unfortunately, and that is the moot point, that the BJP is trying to practice it. It is not merely confined to slogan. They are actually attempting to discriminate. They are trying to use this as a sort of an imposition. They are slowly inching their way to realize their vision and the RSS vision, which was, framed 70, 80 years back. And so therefore, here in West Bengal, or for that matter in Tamil Nadu, or for that matter anywhere else in the country, we definitely people are going to reject this, because the obverse is also correct. Because we can also very well go to the electorate, that you can very well see that we are doing so very well. So why don't you elect us to the... So overall, I think it is a slogan, but then trying to implement it in a way which actually is quite divisive and which is against the letter and the spirit of the constitution of the country.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mishra. We heard your opening thing. I just want to make it one point clear that, we are talking about center and state. RSS is not in power, actually. It's a BJP government which is at the center. So we'll go further. I would like you to...
Fountainhead.
Yeah. So I would like you to
RSS
further...
is the fountainhead of BJP.
Right. So I would like you to further go on the specifics of it. Thank you for your opening remarks. We'll go to Surya later to seek his reaction. Let me first, before that, come to Dhananjay, who's joining us from Bangalore. Dhananjay, you heard the opening remarks of Professor Mishra, and as a lawyer, how do you see this whole situation panning out?
Well, the Constitution itself recognizes that the spending by the states will be far more than the spending by the center, because the states have been given the responsibility of education, healthcare. So, and even as early as 1945, 1949, it was quite known that spending on education and healthcare is going to really cost a lot. So the Constitution expects that the center will be fair while it deals with the states, and that is why we have provision in the Constitution to set up a finance commission. And the finance commission will talk about how the allocation could happen. At the end of the day, when there is public expenditure by all the governments put together in the country, 60% of that public expenditure is incurred by the states. But however, when it comes to revenue, barely 37.5% of the revenue is generated by the states. So there is this deep mismatch, and this mismatch was expected. But at the same time, the Constitution did expect that we would have, able statesmen at the center. And what the BJP is doing is absolutely abhorrent to the federal structure. They ought not to be saying things like, please elect BJP in the states so that then the state is likely to, draw more revenue from the center. If the BJP at the center was quite conscious of what the constitutional goals and constitutional framework is, they would never say anything like this. It's really very shameful on the part of not just BJP government, anybody in the center who would say that we don't want to see regional parties in the states, because the Constitution expects diversity because the framers of our Constitution were very learned men who knew the perils of concentrating power in just a few hands. So they always expected that there will be diversity of leadership, and diversity of leadership means that different people in different states are going to call the shots, and they will coordinate with the center. And what the center is now doing through the BJP government, I think, is truly abhorrent. And I don't know if I've run over my 3 minutes. I'm glad that you arranged for this discussion, because this was very much required.
Right. Thank you, Dhananjay, for your opening remarks. We'll further dwell into details of, you're right in saying that, 60% of revenues are raised by the center and only expenditure is incurred by the states, and they have only power to raise 37% of revenues, and it's constitutionally mandated. That's right. But we'll discuss more about it. Also the issue which here really comes is the lists which have been drawn, the central list, the state list, and the concurrent list. I think that's a very crucial issue, and I will further come back to you on those questions. I'll still hold Surya back for a while. Let him listen to the whole thing and tell us what is the BJP's definition of double engine sarkar. Meanwhile, let me go to our guest from another guest from Chennai. Madam, how do you see this whole issue? You're also part of the professional forum. You're not just politician. I suppose you also are involved, in day-to-day in your work life issues, which does deal with these federal issues.
Hi, thanks a lot for giving this opportunity. I represent the All India Professional Congress, which again comes under the Congress and under Mr. Shashi Tharoor's guidance. I head the state as a secretary for it. And as Mr. Dhananjay rightly said, the Constitution doesn't allow anybody to, or any party to do whatever the BJP government is currently doing. Now, that apart, if the parties, whoever they are, let it be the BJP or our Congress or anybody else for that matter, if they are willing to, look at the people, understand the base problem, work with the states, we rightly called in our state, it's the union of states, which is what it is. And without the states, I would definitely say there is no center. So the jargons of BJP of, double engine. And today I heard somewhere the I2, U2 program that's been introduced, which I haven't got a clarity on what it is. And, too many programs that they keep giving as jargons. If you ask me, like Mr. Dhananjay and Mr. Mishra said, if you ask me on data, of course, again, data is a big question today. If you ask me on data, if BJP has really performed well from the center to, think about ruling the states, I would beg to say that I don't think they have. I have been a HR and I understand the taxations on the middle class. Now, what is the middle class getting back in the taxes that they pay? Are we looking at those things as a government before we jump into the center, from the center to the states, to say that, okay, listen, I've done this in the center, I have implemented it in my states where I rule. Now I would like to come and showcase my talent in your states. Now, is that happening? No. In fact, what we as people see on the televisions every day is that the votes which were bought by money today is being converted to the MLAs. The horse trading that's happening in the country. It's very shameful for a country like India to see such things and for the people to, witness it on a day-to-day basis. What do the BJP government really get in toppling governments which are really doing well? Like, for instance, Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has never seen such, disturbances in ages. And it's like every day we see that there is something or the other happening, Even today there was an instance in Tirupur where, things happened and the people have started rebooting all those things. In a way, it's a lot of disturbance. The peace in the country altogether is gone. Too much of religion is what the BJP government is speaking more than, saying that we would like to rule the state because we've done something enormously well for the country, right? So for me, I would still say that, no, I'm not definitely there for the double engine sarkar as the BJP wants, and definitely it is a threat to the federal.
Right. Madam Sangeeta, I'll come back to you. Let Surya respond to all your, charges. But the thing I would request all of you to, stick to the subject as much as possible. The more we go into generalities, the subject would get out of hand. We are discussing a very simple thing here. The central government and its senior politicians are saying that we need a government in the states which is, in power, which is in the center as well. Have they managed to perform in BJP states, which could have a demonstrative effect for non-BJP states? That's one question. If you look at various indicators, social indicators, whether it is on education, whether it is on health, whether it is on, say, other issues where various developmental activities have been taken place, whether it is on centrally sponsored schemes. So we would like to hear more of that, and that will add more gravitas to the whole discussion. Now, let me go back to Surya. Now it's your chance to respond to all this. Make your opening remarks, and first define double engine sarkar for us. Begin from there. Thank you.
Yes. So, like you said, there were so many political comments also, which I'm forced to reply, but I'll do that at the later stage after my opening remark. To begin with, see, double engine sarkar is a term that has been defined. Per se, like every other speaker has considered, it is neither unconstitutional or immoral. Because the very same constitution to which everybody refers is giving you right to freedom of speech, freedom of campaign, and etc. So now the point of order is whether because of this double engine sarkar stress, the non-BJP states are being discriminated in any way, whether it is discriminated. So that is the question before us. And I would like to deal the subject in two categories. First is whether the current Modi government, which is there for the last 8 years, it has shown partiality between the BJP ruled and the non-BJP ruled state. Second point of concentration will be on what has the states missed without having the same government that as it is in the center and picking up petty fights. To begin with, the honorable speaker from the West Bengal, he was very paranoid about RSS, and he showed this double engine growth is nothing and etc. So I will tell you how it has affected the state of West Bengal. See, in India, in all the states, the scheme Ayushman Bharat was implemented. Even the very vociferous critics of BJP, they had implemented that scheme, and there are crores of beneficiaries in the scheme. It has nothing political in it. But the state of West Bengal has denied implementing the scheme because of the reason that the credit will go to the central government and PM Modi. And also because they saw BJP as a threat electorally by winning 18 parliamentary seats in the elections 2019. So they kept on postponing the implementation of the scheme. Now the question of discussion is whether Ayushman Bharat scheme that is taking care of the health insurance of crores of people in your state is political in nature. It is not political in nature. Second question is whether your state government is giving a equivalent scheme that compensates the health insurance of your own citizens. The answer is no. So you are halting a very good scheme that will help crores of people of your own state because of political reasons. So this is why we define as double engine sarkar. If we have our own government, thousands of people will benefit from it. We saw many of the states, refusing to implement the Kisan Samman Nidhi. So it has nothing political about it. Farmers of your states are getting 6,000 per year. I don't think you should be worried or threatened with such schemes that is going directly to the poor beneficiaries. And the third point is what has the states lost by picking up fights with the center. Very recent example would be the Mumbai Ahmedabad metro. So when the previous government left the office, Mr. Fednavis resigned in 2019. I have the entire data. You had completed close to 71% of the land acquisition. in the last 2.5 years, because they felt ideologically different government is ruling at the center, they kept on postponing the project, not taking up the project. Now it has come to an escalation of close to 30,000 crores to the exchequer. So who benefits out of this? Just because you don't like the party that is ruling in the center, I don't think you should be halting at least developmental projects that should go to the people directly. So this is my part about states picking up fights in not implementing good schemes that are coming from the center. So I will discuss more about in the next round. Now the second part which I spoke about, whether the NDA government or Modi government is discriminating states. So I have data of the fund allocation for the financial year 2022. While I see Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, because until recently it was ruled by opposition coalition, even for that matter Tamil Nadu, or even for that matter West Bengal, so they are seeing a increased allocation of between 15 to 20%. But when I see states like Madhya Pradesh or Gujarat that is BJP ruled, it has a lesser percentage of fund allocation hike compared to the previous years. So my point is, there is no data that any of the panelists here can share or quote or point out which shows the center has discriminated between the BJP and the non-BJP states when it comes to funds allocation, or when it comes to funds allocation for developmental projects and etc. If they can pinpoint a particular scheme, particular state, I would be glad to answer. But honestly, after the bringing out of Niti Aayog, there is increased participation of states in all the decision making process, and also the state devolution has been increased from 32% to 44%. And I think we are giving one of the best democratic governments. Of course you have political reasons to complain us, you have political reasons to not credit us and etc. We don't have problems with that. So it is everybody's politics. But when Congress representative says that we don't understand the pulse of the people and we are anti-people, I think she should go back and check the election results of the last 8 years. So because the pulse of the people was pro-BJP, we could continuously win elections. And when she says we are toppling the governments and etc., may I humbly remind her about how their party formed government in Karnataka, how their party formed government in Maharashtra, betraying the mandate of the people. After fighting election against one party, after the elections, they go and join them just to deny BJP forming the government. So I think that is the bigger horse trading compared to other things. Of course, when you quote when you quote Madhya Pradesh, when you quote Karnataka, there are MLAs from your own party who resigned and they again went to the people's court. They fought elections, they won the elections, and then the government was formed.
Surya, we know all that, how the whole process happened. Actually, now you're slipping into more of politics now to answer, I think, Sangeeta. Thanks for that. Yeah, sure. Would you conclude? Then we'll open up for discussion. Yes,
my conclusion is, I checked all the data, financial allocations and project allocations and etc. With the classic example, I would like to conclude in Jharkhand, we have a non-BJP ruled government for the last 3 years. But when you see, there are many projects that are getting completed in the exact time that was fixed. For example, the Augur Airport, for example, AIMS Hospital in Diohar. Even though there is a change in government, the time frame is completely followed, even though there is a non-BJP government. So this is something we welcome. But in other states, like for example, West Bengal, for example, states like Maharashtra, when MBA government was there, they pointedly, particularly picked up petty fights so that their own development projects will get halted. So this is the reason we are forced to stress on a double engine Sarkar, because people are missing out opportunities, and in every development project, the more you delay, the funding is getting increased. So I would comment more about that on the next one, but for now I would conclude there is no material evidence to tell that Modi government is showing partiality to the non-BJP ruled governments when it comes to fund allocations.
Right, Surya. I mean, one logic of yours, I really don't understand. Why would a state government on its own scuttle its chances? Because after all, they also have to face people at some point of time. In any case, that's your point. You made it. We'll come back to it and we'll discuss specifically. I would like to ask you about this. You can be ready for that. The increased allocation, which you spoke, 15 to 20% for non-BJP states as compared to I would like you to be more specific because some of these also depends on the performance of some of the funds are also allocated depending on how that state has performed. Also, the fact that all the states in India are not equal. There is a variation in their development stages, in their capacities to absorb funding, and there are a whole lot of other issues. So it's not easy to compare. So those issues are also there. We'll come back to that because there are various categories of states. Higher income state, middle income states, low income states. We have to take all that into account. But I have two questions here. I'll go to Mishra ji for this. Surya has raised one point saying that Ayushman, the health insurance scheme was not implemented. The West Bengal government was reluctant to implement the scheme because they were worried that the credit may go to the central government. That's one portion of it. I would like you to respond to that because you should be fair that you are given a chance. But another question I want to ask you is, which is related to that, is West Bengal has been complaining about centrally sponsored schemes. It is saying that just because the name of a scheme is changed, center is not allocating funds. That's one. Second, also the center is now increasingly changing the even in centrally sponsored schemes, the proportion of contribution by the center and the state. For instance, in schemes where 100% funding was given by the center, now it has been made 60-40. In some places where it was 70-30 has been raised to 60-40. So things like that has also happened. So the West Bengal government's argument is, when we have to fund more, why shouldn't we be naming it the way we want? And they're also pointing out that when we name it, center gets angry, but when UP does, you don't say anything. Mr. Mishra, the field is yours.
Thank you. See, regarding Ayushman, this is ridiculous. In fact, 5 times better scheme is very much operational in West Bengal. And I can tell you with some degree of responsibility that the entire country Ayushman Bharat would be sort of short of what Swasthya Sathi, the Bengal government's unique health scheme, provides for. Many people do not know, things get muddled in political jugglery, but the Swasthya Sathi scheme is much better. It is universal and it does not discriminate. Ayushman Bharat actually does not cover all types of people and it discriminates among the population also. Of course, Ayushman Bharat has certain merits, but then these merits fail into insignificance when you have a scheme like Swasthya Sathi. And so that is the answer to the issue that was raised. It was pointed out that the state's allocation that has gone up from 31 to above 40, it actually happened much earlier. It happened based on the recommendation of the Finance Commission, which is set up under Article 280 of the Constitution of India. And actually, this was done before the present government, the Narendra Modi government, came to power in 2014. They have implemented it, of course. Now, the question is that, can I point out what are the discriminations that we are suffering? See, we have had the disastrous demonetization. Now, nobody wants to take credit for the, demonetization. They are all very same. Prime Minister doesn't even refer to it. Then we had GST, very faulty implementation. About 500 changes had to be brought. But together, in this backdrop, you have changed the names of almost all the schemes with the UPA government or the previous government, even Vajpayee government. So you are changing the name. Now, when you are asking the states to shoulder a greater part of the responsibility from 80-20, now it is 60-40, and you are allowing as the moderator very correctly pointed out, that UP can go ahead and make the change, but the West Bengal cannot. We are being threatened that we are not going to be released funds. Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Act, funds are not being released. And why? Because of the name. And it is our program is not named after the chief minister. It is after the West Bengal government. So why Indira Awas Yojana was changed? Why you have this change in terms of yet other allocations also, other schemes also. So whether West Bengal or whether Gujarat or whether Uttar Pradesh, they need to have the flexibility. Some of the states are using that flexibility. By the way, this is also mandated by the Niti Aayog. You did away with the planning commission. We are not getting into the details, but the Niti Aayog paper on the centrally sponsored schemes that talks about different states, their different capacities and different types of economic outlook for them. And they also talk in terms of the flexibility. So therefore, to punish West Bengal, because we are not reflecting the type of change that the central government as part of or in pursuit of its political policy wants to do, that is not going to happen. And with regard to the BJP here in West Bengal, it is over. Maybe you do not know that in West Bengal, BJP of course had an artificial rise, but then now it has completely flattened. And in fact, the vote share actually is coming down like anything. So even without getting into the political electoral context, so far as the constitution is concerned, I said that it is against the spirit of the constitution. This jumla of double engine sarkar. And so therefore, this is completely unacceptable. I do not agree with you when you say that, it is not unconstitutional. Of course, it is against the spirit of the constitution. And BJP is completely uncomfortable with the constitution of India. Everyone knows about it. And so therefore, just because
Professor Mishra will further discuss. We'll discuss more specifics. Dhananjay, there is one issue here which is significant. What Surya was pointing out is the fact that it's Ayushman Bharat is a health scheme, and what was wrong in it? If it's a good scheme, why the state should not adopt it? But the answer to that is
Can I just come in? We have the Swasthya Sathi scheme before the Ayushman Bharat scheme.
Right. I'm coming to that. Right. I'm aware of it. Even Tamil Nadu had the same thing to say to the center. So even Tamil Nadu was pointing out that our health scheme, which we have been running since 2011, is actually better designed, and we have over the years understood various problems and have been reworking those schemes, and we are able to implement it better. So why just to have another scheme when we have our own scheme? These kind of issues, competitive thing is coming up. So that's what when Surya said I wanted to point out. But that's a different question which I want to pose to Dhananjay, since he's a constitutional, he can give us more light on that. The issue here is, if you see, health is actually supposed to be a state subject. And when things like this happen, when one size fits all kind of formula is being, extended to the states, some of the better developed states like Tamil Nadu or even West Bengal in health and some other states, they do oppose this and say that, look, we have a scheme. Why should it be renamed? Why should it be, attempted to make any change in that? How do you see this from a perspective of the Constitution when it is supposed to be under the state list?
Well, I think if West Bengal doesn't want to implement, the central government's scheme, which deals with health, public health, then I think West Bengal takes a risk. And if West Bengal says that their scheme is better, and if they say that publicly, and then I think the central government will have to leave that decision to the West Bengal government's discretion. It's not fair or proper for the central government to impose its will everywhere. It's fine. I mean, nobody says that central government knows the best way to manage finances. And the fact of the matter is this. The central government itself is facing serious financial challenges at this point of time. And the panelist, the learned member from BJP was saying that nobody has the data. Well, one has to just Google up and see all the times that states have complained in terms of disparity from center funds. And you will see hundreds of articles, hundreds of news articles. The Google News is littered with articles like that. Every state complains, and it's all there on Google. And whatever is already there on public domain, I didn't think that any of the panelists were required to come and rehash all of that. Discrimination from the center towards the states in terms of funding is so well known. I think if the center begins to argue and say that, oh, come on, there's just no discrimination at all, then that's when you possibly can't even debate, because, well, they don't even admit to the existence of a problem in the face of a problem. So how can you possibly try to convince them that there is a problem? And this is a very big problem. Now, the double engine thing is, I think there are so many different ramifications to that. Like I was saying, the parliament never really expected that there will be the same government in the center and in the states. In fact, they expected diversity, or rather they, in fact, took steps to make sure that there will be diversity. And that is why they said, let there be a finance commission. And the Finance Commission will mostly lay out a formula. So that formula, by the way, is a mathematical term, and that will bring down into discretion towards individual, states or bring down discretion substantially. But nevertheless, in the working of the finances, there is bound to be discrimination, and we've seen that discrimination operates disproportionately against the BJP states. Number one. Number two. Let's go back to 1973. We had that massive railway strike and all that. And at that point of time, we had this energy insecurity like we continue to have today. Of course, it's worsened now. The parliament came out with something known as the Oil Industry Development Act of 1974. The idea was, let's actually start levying a small cess on consumption of energy products in India, so that we will use that cess to become self-reliant and so on and so forth. In the coming years and decades, all that happened is the cess went into balancing the budget. And at this point of time, I think almost 83% of our energy requirement is imported. And then when you import something, you got to pay in a foreign currency, and our foreign currency reserves are dwindling. And we just saw what happened in Pakistan and what's happening in Sri Lanka when they run out of foreign currency reserves. And I think at this point of time, we have something like 12 to 14 months of import. So India has seen massive financial mismanagement, not just under Mr. Modi, but then it's happened for a very long time. And the fact that 1951-52 elections to the Lok Sabha coincided with elections to the state assemblies, 1957, 1962, and almost 1967, there was this homogeneity, and which I think also prevented India from actually seeing more regional parties. India deserves to have more diversity, and then it didn't witness diversity in the first 20 years of the Republic. And I think that too might have hurt, because if people are not challenged, then obviously they're not going to do well. I mean, this is a rule of nature. This is a rule of democracy. This is a rule of politics. If someone is not challenged, they're not going to do well. But the problem that one can evidently see is that the BJP is not, is not really a consultative party. They try to do it their own way, or at least they try to give the impression that they, in fact, don't believe in consultation and all that. Now, let's take the ESI, the Employee State Insurance, the scheme. It's a scheme that is administered, in collaboration between the center and the states. But then there is a fund that is set up by the ESI Corporation. And that fund has accumulated something like 72,000 crores in reserves. You had the parliamentary panel slamming that body and saying that, look, you have collected this money to provide medical care. And the CAG gives report after report saying that in so many ESI hospitals, you have hospital beds where 2 or 3 patients are put on the same bed. It's that bad. And then the 72,000 crores, this is a central statutory corporation. It's just hoarding. The parliamentary panel said that this is illegal, this is immoral. What actually happened afterwards? The center has difficulty in admitting to mistakes that it makes. And take the demonetization. Demonetization, I think, dislocated the country's finances in a very big way. And at this point of time, there's nobody in the central government who will come forward and give financial data to say that demonetization did some good. Not that it did great good, that it even did some good, because so many research papers have come out saying that demonetization was in fact a disaster. And that demonetization happened because there's a prime minister on the November 8th of 2016 at 8 p.m. He just decides that there is no need to involve the cabinet, there is no need to involve the parliament, and simply put to waste 86% of the notes in circulation in the largest democracy in the world, in the second most populated country of the world. One individual decides that this is how it will go on. And that actually leads to chaos.
Yeah, right. Dhananjay, I think we are slightly going off the track. We're not exactly discussing demonetization and its fallout. We're just discussing whether, how central, if you are giving it as an example of central's governance, I would like to give you more examples where you feel that states are unable to counter it, even constitutionally. Why I'm saying this, because even if you take Article 278 and its various interpretation, it actually gives a freedom both to the center and the state to spend the money the way they want. It's a bit of a discretionary one. And center over the years have been increasingly resorting to more of use of CSS route. And also after the abolition of Planning Commission and Niti Aayog coming in, the step of, the actually administrative ministries themselves allot those funds now directly instead of going through a process which was there earlier. But then
the reason why I mentioned that is because that affects finances, and nobody should be thinking in the center about demonetizing 86% of the notes in circulation without a consultative process. Mr. Morarji Desai, he demonetized 0.3% of the notes in circulation, and he consulted the cabinet, and he came out with an ordinance because they felt that it would not be practical to go to the parliament. The fact is, when consultation lacks, disaster takes place. And I was about to say something else, which is there were 120 deaths. Who took responsibility for that? Who said, oh my God, we are so very sorry, we ought not to have done this. We are sorry for demonetization. There were 120 deaths. We apologize to them. We will compensate them, because these were people who lost their lives standing outside of bank ATM. And there's nobody to take responsibility. The problem with finances is this. Finance is always a question of personal responsibility. And when you lack an individual who will come forward and say, I take personal responsibility, give me the power to take drastic decisions, that's not happening. If there's an individual who says, give me the power, or I've taken the power to take drastic decisions, but I don't take personal responsibility for the failures. And that, in fact, makes people suspicious. That's what I mean. I mentioned about demonetization in that context. Like, I have no political affiliation, and I would like to say that India has seen mismanagement for a very long time, and that's it.
Right. Thank you. Now I would like to go back to Chennai, and Madam, if you can reflect upon, there is a point which Surya made, saying that his point was actually it is the states which are refusing to cooperate with the center when schemes are given to them, which actually could be advantageous to them as well. And he actually said that to spite the center, states are actually ignoring some of these schemes which would help and the people in the states. Do you agree with that? If not, why? I think audio is muted. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I don't think I would like to agree with Mr. Surya on the point that the state differs to take anything that comes from the center. We've run governments in the center from the Congress side, and there have been states which have worked with the Congress, and the Congress was able to do things better because the implementation was better, the understanding of the schemes were better. And the states have really performed well individually as well. So where is the appreciation for the states from the center saying that, hey, you've done this well. Let's also work on this, and I will increase the mandate for you so that you could do better. Why would the center want to tell the states that no, this is how we want this thing to be done. That is where I guess the entire problem starts. Now the center is a center and you have been voted and you say that you've come to power, fair enough. Why would you want to push yourself into the state's areas? A state survives in having their names for their people. Now, if BJP says, no, this is how we want to do it, we are funding you this, the states are going to say, no, we don't want it. What is wrong? Especially for a state like Tamil Nadu, which is performing really, really well in every area. Why should the state accept the center when it gives an allocation fund from the taxes that the people of Tamil Nadu have paid to the center, that they say these things? So I think even constitutionally, the double engine sarkar shouldn't have been spoken about. It can just be a jargon, but I don't think it is right for them to even speak that way when they sit in the center and represent the country to the world. It doesn't sound right for any citizen that, who's sane. So that is what I would say about it.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Now, Surya, you have lots of things to respond. Please go ahead.
See, I am very amused with the Congress party because everything they began when we rightly implemented with consensus, they have problems with it. To begin with, about the double engine sarkar, probably the words used might have been different, but I can show you different election campaigns between 2004 and 2014. Particularly the Karnataka elections in 2013 and many other elections where even the Congress made similar points. We are ruling the center, so if you want all the schemes to get implemented, you please vote us. So this is a very normal thing that the ruling parties in the center keep pointing out. So suddenly, if you have problems with it,
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt here, sir. Voting is something and pushing is something else.
No, see, we are not pushing anything. So we are just telling it is better to elect the same government in the state and the center. So I think it's a legitimate right we have to campaign to the people and tell it the functioning will be smooth and etc. And there have been no other external force or influence or any threats made to any people anywhere in the country. So we are also losing elections in many states. So it is not that China, we are telling that only you should elect our own government and we are forcing people to vote to our own party. So it is upon people to whether accept it or not. To counter with few of the arguments that were made, I think the TMC spokesperson had problem with the center renaming the schemes. I will just quote couple or three of schemes for time constraints to tell how the schemes were changed. For example, you take Awas Yojana, that is the free housing facility. It was previously you named as Indira Awas Yojana, like the same TMC spokesperson has pointed. So my question is, why do you want a single prime minister's name to be on a scheme which is common to the entire country? So we have just named it as prime minister, a common name. We did not name it as Vajpayee, Advani or Deen Dayal Upadhyaya, nothing. We just named it as prime minister. I don't think you should have problems with it. I rather think you should appreciate
that is not correct. That is not correct. You have present prime minister's picture. Why do you need to have his picture in that case? And how come that you have allowed UP to have the name change, right? UP has
different prime minister comes, you can put their photo. I don't think it's a big problem.
But why should the prime minister's photo be there?
Because he is the prime minister elected by the country, as simple as that.
So therefore,
let me complete
the chief ministers are also elected. Here we are not giving the chief minister.
Right, Mr. We'll come back to you. Let him complete his argument.
I'll complete this. So I completed one scheme. There is another scheme, Indira Gandhi Matriva Sahayog Yojana. We just changed it as Pradhan Mantri Matriva Vandana Yojana. What is the problem with having a common name? Another classic example. You award Khel Ratna for the best sports people in this country. Why should you have Rajiv Gandhi's name in the scheme? We rightly named it after Major Dhyan Chand, who is a sporting legend of this country. We did not name after any BJP leader. So I can...
Yeah, I know, Surya, I have a point here. You're right in saying that why in every... Maybe you have a point in saying, Congress may have a different perspective on that every scheme should be named after either Nehru or Gandhi, the family, Indira Gandhi, and so on. You have a point there. As a BJP, you are raising it, and Congress has its own viewpoint on that. But you said that it's more neutral name. The center has renamed an old scheme and calling it Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. Okay. But when the state government changes it to Bangla Awas Yojana, it is neither Mamta involved or any other family member. Why do you stop funding for that? And it has renamed Swachh Bharat Mission as Nirmal Bangla Mission. So you are saying whole Bharat should be Swachh. They are saying, yeah, Bangla should be Nirmal. It's the same thing. They are also saying, why quibbling with these names and for that stopping funds?
I will explain you as a politician who's on the ground. There are administrative difficulties. See, if you have 33 states in this country and you have the same name in 32 states and one state has a problem with it, I think it is problematic. It is purely for administrative reasons. There is absolutely no political reasons attached to it. So even the problem that is created is political in nature. The same Madam Mamta Banerjee did not have problem when there was Indira Gandhi, when there was Rajiv
Well,
Gandhi.
again, sorry, Surya, I'll interject this. When Uttar Pradesh government renames is as the Pradhan Mantri scheme as UP Awas Vikas Yojana, there is no problem. I mean, why does that happen? A centrally sponsored scheme, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana in Uttar Pradesh, there the state is allowed to rename and call it UP Awas Vikas Yojana. Why?
See,
I mean, that's a question which will naturally arise, isn't it? Yeah.
No. See, that is not for the entire free housing project. The free housing project is divided into two. One is rural and one is urban. So again, there are technicalities. When West Bengal, there is a problem. It has been clearly pointed out that name change is not the only reason. There are problems again with fund sharing ratio and the way it has been shared, etc. And there are administrative problems. So it is not that only the name change is a problematic one. And again, we insist that the common names are better. That is how we have been doing right from the beginning. It is not something new. And again, I will counter another argument that was quoted by the Congress spokesperson. She said the Congress was better in implementing schemes while BJP has failed. I will explain you with the classical example of GST. You see, everybody knows GST is the pet project of the Congress party. When they tried to implement that in the year 2013, their own states of like Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh were not accepting to implement GST. But after Mr. Arun Jaitley became Prime Minister under Mr. Narendra Modi, the scheme was implemented. You cannot tell GST was implemented with the opposition from the states. Even parties like DMK and even Congress, they voted in favor of GST. So GST, every price that is fixed, every methodology that is being done, everything is based on consensus. In the GST council that is meeting, if you have problem with the price, GST tax rate increase of particular product, even if one state is opposing, you cannot pass that increase. Everything is based on consensus. If you have problems with GST, I will tell you, GST is a classical example of our government in showing the world that how the diversity can be tackled and work together. You look out every committee that is appointed in regards to GST, be it technical or be it financial committee and etc. You have participation from all the states. The TMC finance minister was heading various committees as part of the West Bengal government. You had you have Tamil Nadu's finance minister heading a committee in technical issues and etc. So GST is a classical example on how Mr. Modi government is respecting the federal structure, and still it can function smoothly on consensus. And the learned advocate spoke about demonetization. He had pointed out so many complaints, but I do not agree when he says it should have been implemented after consulting the cabinet, after consulting the state government. The very purpose would have not been served. So since it was kept confidential, but I will also tell it is not only the Prime Minister's decision. There are higher level officers from the RBI and
Yeah,
from
but
different levels
Surya,
who
even the
have
RBI did
taken
not
this
know.
decision.
Even the RBI didn't know. The people were
No.
supposed to.
So it is not that only Prime
Definitely.
Minister has decided to implement that. There are people who are consulted,
No,
who are
actually,
taken into confidence.
right.
So there is
In
a
fact,
process in this
So
country of
let
this,
Mishra, let him complete. Then
in
I'll
fact,
complete.
he's right. In
Yeah.
fact, he's right that it was not only the Prime Minister. Some of the business friends of the Prime Minister, they were involved. And I can give you
People
the
from the
proof.
corporate
Because, no,
world,
no, one
where
second.
people from the corporate world formed the council in the RBI, and they were made aware. So if states can't be trusted, but then corporate businessmen who sit in the RBI council are made aware, that's when we have a problem.
no. So the previous demonetization, you seem to suggest that every state was consulted and their arguments were taken.
That
And
was high denomination notes dealing with 0.3% of the notes only. Mr. Desai was in fact asked to do much more. And he felt, oh no, this would dislocate actually the revenue of the states and the center. We can't do that. So they only demonetized 0.3%, less than 1%, less than 0.5% of the
So-
notes in circulation.
so
They were not
this-
dealing with 86%, and 86% of the currency in circulation is practically unheard of in the last 100 years in any major economy.
But we also know that 86% of the currencies were held by who and who. Like you said, the common people who you seem and claim to have got affected.
99.98% of the notes have come back.
Yes.
The idea was that a big chunk of money is not going to come back because it's in fact held by
Anyway,
nefarious groups.
No. As we have seen the result,
Yeah,
several thousands of crores came
I'm
into the
glad.
banking system, and we also know how the
I'm
taxpayers'
glad that
numbers
we
got
have.
increased.
I'm glad
There
that
could
at
have
least
been
there is one
problems in
BJP
implementing and etc. But there are
representative
also
who is
equal
being very
advantages, which I
No,
can
1 minute,
show
Mr.
hundreds of
Mishra. Let him
papers.
speak. Let him speak.
No,
You
there-
should hear him because
I already heard him.
we should
I
hear.
already heard
Yeah. So Surya, I think you made several points. It's interesting. I'll come back to you once again. I think you have to defend quite a bit. If you're able to actually give an example of how a compared to a non-BJP state, a BJP state has, due to help of double engine Sarkar, has been able to perform better. You can take example of any BJP ruled state and then say compared to a non-BJP how they have done. If you have any data, you can share with us. Meanwhile, I'll come back to Mishra ji. You're saying something, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that at least we have someone from the BJP who is not ashamed of demonetization and who is still singing praises of demonetization. Secondly, it just occurred to me to point out to him that there was one state government and one chief minister who was so very much opposed to the GST. And then, of course, he is the one who Mr. Surya would like to credit with the introduction of the GST, which has undergone at least 300 amendments. Thirdly, I would like to tell him that what is going on? You are not fulfilling the obligations arising out of the GST arrangement because the state governments are repeatedly complaining time and again. And I'm not talking only of the non-BJP state government. I'm talking of all the state government. They are complaining that the central government, union government is failing to live up to the commitment that it has under the GST regime. Fourthly, I would like to point out that the question that you have asked, in fact, it can be reversed. We find whether it is Tripura or whether it is Uttar Pradesh, whether it is Haryana, or name any of the BJP states, or even say Gujarat. What is the type of performance that you do have? A state like West Bengal or Tamil Nadu or Kerala, which actually is ruled by three different set of political parties, they are doing much better, say, in the healthcare. And with regard to education, it just occurred to me, I just want to point out that I am professor of international relations at Jadavpur University. And today the central government has come out with the list of the top ranking universities. My university is number 4, and among the universities is the number 1. And the JNU is there, Jamia Millia is there, and Hyderabad University is there in the first 10. And all these institutions, to the extent that there is diversity of viewpoint, these have all been termed and dubbed as heaven for anti-nationals and so on by the great leaders of the BJP time and now. So therefore, kindly respect diversity. You are saying that the relationship will be smooth. Why are you saying the relationship will be smooth if there is double engine? That means that you are trying to re-engineer the relationship in a political way, in a narrow way. That is unacceptable, that is unethical, and that is actually unconstitutional as well.
Okay. Quickly, Dhananjay, there are two issues here. One is, in a recent judgment, the Supreme Court has also said the GST recommendations are not binding on the states. That's a very important one they have said. And even in the case of, I'm coming back to CSS once again, it's been said that the Supreme Court in various decisions, I think Bommai, they have also said that, the states have the freedom to exercise. Even they have a discretion. What do you feel is the states not able to come out with creative solutions, not articulate, or what is the kind of hurdles they are facing that they are not able to present an alternate approach to this?
Well, I think the GST approach will certainly fail so long as we don't have a very consultative and a very accommodating
Right.
spirit on both the center and the states. We've seen that. I can give a small example of, earlier entertainment taxes. Entertainment taxes used to be levied by the states, and they had full sovereignty over what films to provide a tax exemption for and all that. After the GST came in, the Delhi government wanted to exempt a film. I believe it was 1983. It's a Hindi film. The process is so cumbersome. I don't think they were able to get the center on board. So the Delhi's government said, let's actually waive off SGST. But the problem with the computer system that deals with GST is so bad. They said, okay, if we waive off the 9% that SGST, in fact, a component is there in a movie ticket, movie theater owners can't just, include the 9% CGST, because the GST system is so crude, is so rudimentary. It's actually, just not so helpful. They said, okay, this is what will happen. The theater owners are not going to charge 9%, from the audience, but they will in fact pay it on their own to the GST port through the GST portal, and then they will write to the state and then say, please give us back this money. This is like going back 75, 80 years. And I just gave you the example of Delhi, because the Delhi government took liking to this movie. And then recently there was a Kannada movie known as 777 Charlie. The Karnataka government made it tax-free. And after it made it tax-free, it actually said the same thing to all the movie theater owners. It said, look, the 9% you pay. I mean, I'm saying 9% because movie tickets costing about 100 attract 9% CGST and 9% SGST. The state government asked movie theaters to, in fact, pay 9% from their pocket, and then pay it also through the portal and then claim it. And there was this movie, Kashmir Files, for which the state government did the same. A few theater owners were adventurous. They, in fact, got into this, and then they have not been able to recover their money. So when the state government, for this Kannada movie, they said movie theaters will carry forward this cumbersome strategy, 90% of theaters refused. They said, forget about this tax-free status. We will charge a full fee from the patrons. We will act as if there is no tax-free component here at all. Now, this requires software tweak. What's wrong with the GST system that they can't? I mean, we are supposed to be the software capital of the world. We are so crude and so unimaginative when it comes to GST implementation that something as simple as being able to take off that 9% SGST for movies which state governments deem to be worthy of tax-free status is just not possible in the software system. And we are the software capital of the world. That must, in fact, I'm not really blaming any one government. All I'm saying is that we have just too much work to do. Now, coming back to this double engine thing, there is this clamor sometimes for elections to be held at just once. That we will have an election in which there will be an election to the Lok Sabha and then elections to all the state assemblies. Whoever actually wants an arrangement like this forgets the fact that state assemblies dissolve so many times. and state assemblies are broken through defections and so on and so forth. And when that happens, they say that, look, let's artificially prop it up and just keep it to, I mean, let's make it survive for the balance of that 5-year term. Now, you can't even be talking about it if you knew the head or tail of the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution talks of a representative democracy. You cannot keep a government that does not enjoy a majority of the people in hibernation and somehow make it survive for a 5-year term. You just can't do that. Even if, let's say, Article 368 of the Constitution is somehow amended to make it necessary for elections to the parliament, to the lower house of the parliament, and all the state assemblies be held at the same time, that will have to be struck down by the courts, because that in fact encroaches upon, or that in fact derogates from the essential feature of the Indian Constitution, which is it's a representative democracy. Now, whoever wants this dual elections at the same time, forget the fact that the Constitution of India doesn't just talk, because the Constitution of India is the most voluminous one in the world. And it just doesn't talk about 5-year term to the Lok Sabha and 5-year term to the legislative assemblies in the states. It goes so far as to talk about the panchayats and then nagar panchayats. It talks about municipal councils. It talks about municipal corporations. It talks about metropolitan areas. And then it says panchayat, nagar panchayat, municipal council, municipal corporations will have a term of 5 years. So if somebody in the center says that let's have this, because I did see an interview where Mr. Modi was so passionate about it. He said that, look, everyone is in an election mode all the time. There are these elections that happen. So he didn't make this argument that elections happen even to the municipal councils, municipal corporations, nagar panchayats and panchayats. So what are you going to do? Are you also going to bring that along with the center? No. Well, then whoever wants this one election is only talking about this scenario where you have 1 or 2 leaders that have to go around the states. Let's make life easy for them. Let's just have elections together so that life becomes easier for them. What kind of thinking is this?
Right. Thank you for that. Sangeeta, I have a question for you. There is a point which Dhananjay raised, and it applies to Tamil Nadu as well. Tamil Nadu has been seeking autonomy from the center, and it's been very vociferous on various issues. But, there are similar demands from the third level of governance in Tamil Nadu as well, like he was pointing out. They too are demanding, a larger share in funds. Are they getting it to, what state preaches to the center, is it able to practice when it goes one level down, administrating self-administration of local bodies?
Okay. To answer that, let me come on the line. Mr. Surya said that GST was the pet project of the Congress. Agreed, yes. But what happened when Congress wanted to implement it? Did they push GST on the states which didn't want to take it? No. But they allowed them to understand what it is. 2. Are we clear on GSTs? Every day morning we wake up, we see GST getting increased or GST getting put into new things. And, we should also understand if people are going to be paying GST in things like curd, atta, and, on a daily consumable, is the people worried about it, that they're spending more than what they spent yesterday? Is the central?
Yeah, but I think you have to bear in mind that all the decisions in GST are taken as a consensus, and states are also party to that.
I doubt, Mr. Srinivasan, I doubt whether Tamil Nadu will even accept somebody saying that we need to have GST on yogurt. I definitely doubt if there was a consensus given from the Tamil Nadu government on that. Now, if you talk about consensus, is that being even asked? That's number one. Number 2, you asked me about, the kind of GST allocations that you were talking about. Mr. Tyagarajan was very clear on that. And when he raised it up in the first, I think it was the second GST council, he very clearly said, Tamil Nadu is a bigger state, right? So that is what he said. We need to have a bigger allocation, because even our taxations on what we give back to the state, to the center, is much higher than what other states which are smaller gives to them. If you talk about, what this is happening in Tamil Nadu, you're kind of developed, so you might not need that much of a funding, then that's wrong. Was the GST given back on time to the states? The center collected it, right? So what was the delay in the center giving it back to the states when the states required it? And I remember very clearly, it was the DMK government which came in when we had the second phase of Corona. The entire country was struggling without oxygen. And that was when the entire GST Council was happening, and Mr. Tyagarajan had requested that the state's share comes back immediately. Was that done? Is that what BJP is all about? I mean, is that the kind of, what do you call it, implementation you're talking about? And if at all, if BJP government doesn't want to do that, why would they even think of ruling another state which is already doing well? And why would they think about, speaking about the double engine? I think we will be far better off without the double engines. And I think as a state, we should be given that kind of a rights to any state. That is what Congress did. Congress never pushed themselves into a state which was running well and said, hey, listen, I will do this for you if you allow me to walk in. Did we do that? No. So why is BJP
that?
I
I think to be fair to Surya, some of these kind of indiscretions were done by Congress regimes also in the past. I won't completely give them a clean sheet. Now, let me go back quickly to Professor Mishra. What about the role of central investigative agencies? There is a constant refrain from West Bengal that there is a, there is a partial approach when it comes to their own leaders, BJP leaders. There is a leniency shown, and the central agencies barely act. But then when it comes to opposition leaders, they're quick to move. That's an allegation from TMC. In fact, TMC went and protested in front of CBI offices.
Thank you for raising this question. In fact, this is not an allegation only from the TMC. Almost all the opposition parties have been very rightly and pointedly raising this issue of the gross misuse of the CBI and ED and so on. We already know, and it's all quite well documented also, that what has just recently happened in Maharashtra. We also know that what type of false charges were put on a respected leader like Mr. P. Chidambaram. But if anybody is talking about that, no, because the central government is trying to victimize. And this is what they are consistently attempting to do so far as West Bengal is concerned. Now, for example, there's a coal scam. So what about the role of the central government? Coal industry is under the central government. They're talking about the cow smuggling. What about the role of the BSF? And so what we find here, that there is no case. But at the same time, they would like to keep on harassing the TMC leadership. And this has all started happening, especially after the very conclusive elections to the State Legislative Assembly in Bengal, because they wanted to conquer Bengal. This is their dream, to conquer Bengal and to conquer Tamil Nadu, conquer Kerala, etc., etc. In Bengal, they employed all types of tactics. It did not work out, and the BJP is actually almost down and out. What is happening here is that, say, Mr. Shubhendu Adhikari, he was with the TMC, and then when he went over to the BJP, then the BJP is actually giving him a clean sheet. Same thing with the Hemanta Biswa Sharma. He was with the Congress, and then now that he is with the BJP, there is no case. So once you join the BJP, then the BJP...
You are referring to Sarda scam.
Yeah. In Naroda case, we definitely see Mr. Shubhendu Adhikari accepting money, but then there is no summon. And so far as the Saroda case is concerned, the person who has given the money, he is writing to the President of India, Prime Minister of India, writing to the CBI. He has given a statement before the magistrate that he was forced to give money to Mr. Shubhendu Adhikari. No action against Mr. Shubhendu Adhikari. But the TMC leaders, for one pretext or the other, they are being harassed. So this is happening.
Right.
People have also seen through this, and we are, of course, definitely going to fight it. And what they are talking in terms of this Jumla called double engine, it is in fact completely contradictory to what they possibly mean. And I suppose that the BJP representative has said that the relationship will be smooth. The contrary is that if there is non-BJP government, then the relationship will not be smooth and BJP will see to it. And that is what they are doing.
Okay. There is a question from an audience. Dhananjay, I wonder whether you would like to take it. Is an institutional fix required to prevent the center from favoring states ruled by the same party? This is a question.
Well, yes, ideally it would be necessary to come out, bring about something like that. But in actual practice, it won't be workable at all, because you have to eventually trust. The center, at the end of the day, receives a large amount of money from the taxpayers. So you got to trust the center to do the right thing. And so when it comes to these provisions in the Constitution, which deals with allocations between center and the states, you will find the language is rather crisp. We don't have too many provisions in the Constitution, but then you have so many provisions in the Constitution dealing with what some might say are minor issues. So the Constitution is built at some level on an implicit trust in the center. And therefore, the Constitution, the framers had in mind a benevolent center, which is not going to do all of the things that we are discussing. The center is allegedly doing to the states. So it won't be possible. It won't be workable at all, because at some level, now, why does America have? America has a very short constitution. I mean, their constitution will fit in 4 or 5 pages, and we have the most voluminous one, and they're still surviving. So sometimes, like our framers basically felt that let's not leave the courts to make up the law. Let's in fact state everything. When they say how a state will have to be carved out, they in fact give full power to the parliament, with the only exception that the president will have to president will have to in fact inform and the concerned state and obtain the views of the state. But then there's a provision wherein they say that if, however, union territory is involved, then the president need not even do this. So our constitution, therefore, sometimes it trusts some people, and sometimes, not sometimes. Throughout the constitution, you will find a lot of leverage, put to the center. So the center, therefore, will have to act and discharge the trust reposed in it, and it won't be possible to make laws of laws.
Thanks, Dhananjay. I would like to refer, like you were saying, most of these things are detailed out in most documents. Even the 15th Finance Commission, which is actually being discussed very widely, has said that schemes co-financed by the center should be flexible enough to allow the states to adapt and innovate. It's actually there. Further, they have set top-down mandates and strictures on program implementation or antithesis of an open source model. Centrally sponsored schemes should grant states significant latitude to tailor implementation modalities to local realities. So, all these things are, as you're saying, are stated there. Let me now.
That's not in the Constitution. I mean,
no, it's not. I'm referring to the 15th Finance Commission more specifically. I'm referring to that because the transfer of funds between, from center to states. Since we are discussing that, I was referring to that. Of course,
the ED things. The ED thing also matters, because if states must trust the center in matters of finance, then the states must also be able to trust the center in matters of other areas as well. Now, the ED and the CBI thing, it's obvious. I mean, corruption is widespread. Corruption is present in not almost every political party. So if the ED was doing a very neutral job, we would have found ED doing a lot to embarrass the BJP. But we find the ED and the CBI are so very careful to not embarrass the BJP. And that's when you will have to believe the allegations made by the opposition that the ED and the CBI have been weaponized. That is also going to hurt the financial relationship between the center and the states. When the ED and the CBI go after very, leading personalities in state politics, and when those people turn around and say that they're going to vote against whoever is in power, or they want to migrate over to the BJP, that in fact creates a whole lot of distrust that's going to spill over into this financial relationship. So it's not possible to keep the ED and then the CBI factor out of this discussion. I'm glad you brought that in.
Right. We're running out of time. We just left with 5 minutes. I would like all of you to make one quick this thing. I think I would give the first opportunity to Dhananjay because he really has to defend a lot of issues. So Dhananjay, go on. I mean, it's your chance now.
I think the double engine sarkar, it doesn't make any sense from a constitutional point of view, and it is also not ethical.
Okay.
It hurts people.
Sorry, I meant Surya, not you. But you conclude, yeah. You conclude.
Yes,
that's
all that is all I have to say. But at the same time, I think the states this time have to be very considerate towards the center. The center is going to face a lot of difficulties, financial difficulties, and it's okay. The states have blamed the center enough, but now it's important for the states to sit and work with the center because the center is really facing a great crisis. We all the forex and the energy crisis, and the center is running out of money. And I think it's important for the states to help the center as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Surya.
Yeah, see, you asked me during the previous round to point out some of the things that worked because of a double engine sarkar. So I would like to end my comments with that note. Like I said, the Mumbai Ahmedabad metro. When we demitted office, we had completed 71% of the land acquisition, which is a record speed. And also coming to Karnataka, the electrification of railways, it has almost increased to 100% when the BJP government was in power. Now we have electrified close to 1,600 kilometers of railway track, which was very, very small during the Congress period. And also about Uttar Pradesh, 11 expressways, and also the state has is a top in execution of 44 centrally sponsored schemes, and also setting up of industrial corridor and etc. It is showing strides in development. To finish with, I would like to remind the Congress spokesperson that GST was passed in the parliament as a consensus, including the Congress party supporting it. When few MPs of the Congress party wanted to bring in some amendments on the very day of the GST bill was passed, Mr. Manmohan Singh requested them not to do it and pass it through consensus. And in fact, he has given a go-ahead of the GST thing. Why Congress could not implement GST was they failed in convincing the states of the compensation aspect. The Modi government has said that for the 5 years, any revenue loss because of the GST will be compensated. And now it has been increased to another 4 years. So, total of 9 years, even a single rupee that will be lost by any state government will be compensated by the central government. And that is why every state agreed to it. So I think that talks volumes about the ability of the central government led by Mr. Modi to convince the states and take the country forward in the developmental aspect. So I again insist, double engine growth is just a political campaign. It is not something that is forced. It is not something unconstitutional and etc. With the good governance.
Okay, thank you. I think you said it. Thank you for that. I will take it as your concluding point quickly, Madam Sangeeta. He's saying it's politics, end of the day.
Absolutely, it is politics, Mr. Srinivasan. That is what even I'm saying. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
So if they're still talking about, taking consensus and then doing things, I doubt if they're really talking what they're talking about.
Right. Thank you. Professor Mishra, quickly. I think, is there a real trust deficit? Because there are 2-3 important words which Dhananjay used. Center is supposed to be benevolent, fair, maybe accommodative. Actually, he didn't use that word, but he meant 2 words exactly, benevolent and fair. You think, is there a trust deficit?
Yes, and that is unfortunate. It is not supposed to be. See, ultimately, the common man and women in the country, they are much more closer to the local level government and the state government. Central government, of course, but then it is more of an idea. And so therefore, state government's autonomy and their rights and their demands should be accommodated by the central government. What is happening? Earlier also in the 1950s or 60s, the state government used to have problems, even when you have the same party government, because
right,
it's always a question of resource allocation. But right now, what is happening is that the central government is using its power, not in terms of accommodating the state, not in terms of respecting the diversity, but in terms of undermining the system that we have been able to build up. So that is
Right.
unfortunate, and that is how and why this so-called double engine, etc., is unworking.
Right. We're running completely out of time. Thank you all for a very nice discussion. Ideally, both the center and the state should work in unison to ensure development of a nation. But the problems arise when they begin to indulge in competitive populism to attract voters. That's what I believe. There would be more discussion on the issue in the coming days, as it's unlikely that the issues will be sorted out anytime soon. This will be a continued discussion. Thank you all for joining this webinar on the Federal. Good night.
Good night.